Alright, so I have been lacking on my movie reviews, so here goes. On, I think it was the 27th of October, I took my son to see Five Nights at Freddy's. I have never played the games. He has. He's a Five Nights at Freddy's or FNAF fan. So I went in only knowing what he had told me about this, video game franchise here. It's not the worst movie I've ever seen. It's fairly short, in my opinion. Parts of it were interesting. Other parts made no sense. And it's not just, oh, you didn't play the game, doesn't make sense, so you wouldn't understand it kind of thing. No, it's more like somebody dies in somebody's living room and it's never brought up, kind of making sense kind of thing. There was also parts that were very obvious of things, and I have no idea if this is just the script itself or, that it's basically based off of what's supposed to be, I guess, a horror game that's been made into a PG-13 movie. I don't know how bad the games get. I've seen him play some of the games, and I've seen him watch some fan-made things on YouTube, so some of that stuff can vary and everything. And I mean, it didn't have to be a hardcore horror movie. It's just it's like I said, the things that just didn't make sense that kind of made the movie not the greatest. And I'm trying not give things away for people who might want to go see it, but it's kind of hard to explain things without getting into spoilers. So basically, this movie is about a guy, I don't remember his name, but he is fighting for custody of his sister. He's fighting his aunt, basically, because I think their mom died and their dad ran away. And it's basically revealed that years ago, when they were younger, or at least when he was younger, I never really got that point in the movie, if the little sister was alive when this happened and she was just a baby or something, or if they had her after that fact, because that kind of stuff happens. But anyways, it's revealed that years ago his little brother was kidnapped and he wasn't able to stop it, and so he kind of overreacts at a lot of situations, and he keeps losing jobs. So he goes to a place for you to find jobs and stuff, and he ends up at what they call Freddy's for the Fazbear's Pizza or something like that, I think it's called. Nobody's there anymore. It's been shut down because these kids got killed years ago, but it's the owner doesn't want to let it go, so he's basically just a security guard basically in an abandoned restaurant, really. And the animatronics are haunted. I mean, that's an interesting concept. It is. It's just, I have a feeling that the games are a lot more interesting and probably make a lot more sense in their storyline. So anyways, yeah, like I said, not the worst thing that I've ever seen, because I've seen some really low budget horror movies and stuff that are just don't even seem like they tried. But yeah, I would say it's probably better if you were already a fan of this going in. Alright, so it is time for me to review what I was hoping was going to be the best adaptation of the Hunger Games series, and it just wasn't. Oh boy. See, I know what people are gonna say, that you can't fit everything from a book into a movie, and I agree. I And I do understand that there has to be some changes, right? There are movies from books that I really enjoy that have a significant amount of changes because it was made in a different time period. Such as movies like Matilda, or maybe it was short and they had to expand a little bit more on it. So I'm understanding and flexible. Like in the original adaptations, or the original trilogy and the adaptations with the Hunger Games, a lot had to be added that technically wasn't in the book because the books were told in first-person point of view, which means that they were told from the point of view of the character. The character was telling you the story. So, like, when she's fighting in the Hunger Games, you don't know what's going on outside the arena because you're in this character's head. So, adding scenes of Snow and Crane and Haymitch and all that other stuff, talking and other things going on, people watching the games, that made sense for the movie, right? Because technically that's what's happening when you read it, because they tell you this is the televised thing and everything, so that, but obviously that wouldn't really work for a movie. So I understand. It's a lot of us book readers aren't as unflexible, is that a word, unflexible? I don't know, as people might think, okay? But somebody made a good point, and I'm sorry I can't remember where this came from. I think it was something I read on Facebook, that somebody had said that it's not exactly what they left out a lot of the time, or maybe even what they added. It's what they chose to leave in. And the thing about this movie is, despite the fact that it was over 2 hours, it felt like a lot of the important things, while they were in there, some of them, it seemed a lot of like the more political, social commentary, philosophical things were either talked about kind of briefly, almost like they wanted to hurry up and get it done, or just not in there at all. And that was the issue that I had with it. I think the Hunger Games part of it was well done. Other parts, yeah, it just seemed very rushed. Like, for a movie that was over 2 hours, it just seemed like a lot of the important stuff, or even some of the not so important stuff, was just rushed. Like, I didn't quite understand when people were saying that it's almost 3 hours, but it felt so rushed, until I watched it. And now I understand what people mean when they say that they're afraid that people who didn't read this book will go into the movie thinking that Snow, or Coriolanus, whatever you want to call him, turned out the way he did because he was kind of like scorned by a girl, instead of the fact that his character is basically an allegory for a white supremacist, and that he was basically so paranoid that these district people, or let's be honest, what they're supposed to represent, immigrants, or people who just live differently from him, was going to destroy his way of life, to take away his wealth and destroy his family name and all that stuff. Things, racist and other prejudiced people are basically paranoid about, that kind of thing. It just felt really downplayed. And it's also kind of downplayed in the original movies and stuff. A lot of the symbolism and representation and all that other stuff. But it just felt really downplayed here. And having a diverse cast, especially having certain characters that were played by actors of color and stuff, and the way certain things were set up, I kind of thought that we would see more of the message that Suzanne Collins was trying to convey in this book. But yeah, I just felt like their time was brief. The things that they had to say, the points that were being made, just seemed kind of like glossed over. Very brief. I was disappointed because I thought there was going to be more to the Hanging Tree song. It's in the movie, but the whole thing about it being banned and what she says and what she asks him about giving up her freedom and the Hunger Games and all that other stuff is not there at all. It's completely like taken out of the movie. There is a point in the book where Lucy Gray asks Corio, you know, if he thinks like the Hunger Games are right and everything, and he even says he's not really sure why they do them. And that basically all he knows is while they may seem cruel or strict, that they're just trying to keep everyone safe. And it's like it's totally going over his head that, and this was explained by Sejanus too, that the Capitol doesn't care about the districts, they care about the industries, not the people. And it just doesn't click in his head that they are the reason the war started, and they are the ones that are putting these kids into this arena to kill each other. And it's like, yeah, that they're the ones doing these games. It just, he doesn't question any of this. He doesn't question the morality of it, or the fact that some of his people, at least some of them, might be at fault for the war, and the fact that, you know, both his parents are dead, and that he had to burn things like children's books and things that were important to him for fire to not freeze to death, you know. It's just that if the Capitol people who look like him or live like him, do it or say it, it must be true. And these other people, the district people, they're, you know, uncivilized. You know, that's just how he is. He doesn't, like I said, question. It's like blind patriotism, nationalism, basically. And yeah, he mentions keeping them safe, and she says, what do I give up for that? And he says, nothing. And then she says, well, you know, we're not allowed to travel anymore. We can't perform without their say-so. We're only allowed to sing certain types of songs because the Hanging Tree song was banned. So that whole thing about censorship was taken out. The whole thing with, I think I'm going to have to make a part 2 for this. Alright, so continuing what I was saying from the last video, continuing on, another thing besides the talk between Corio and Lucy Gray about the Hunger Games and him just believing that, you know, the Capitol is out to protect people, and how she basically has to give up any kind of freedom for this safety. Which is obviously a commentary on censorship, much like the if it weren't for the baby thing and catching fire was kind of a jab at pro-lifers who don't give a shit about kids after they're born. Obviously, that's what those two are supposed to be about, right? But they totally skipped over a lot of things that came before the games. They did do the thing where they get put into the monkey cage, but it's like was recorded or filmed or whatever you want to say in a way where you knew they were like at a zoo. But I don't know, it just wasn't emphasized really what it was. So when she arrives on the train and he follows them into the little car, they get dumped into the monkey house, right? And she mentions to Corio about food and everything. And in the book, it's actually Sejanus that first takes food to them. And he's kind of mad because Sejanus is like a district person that his family bought their way into the capital, so he doesn't really think he belongs there. He's jealous of the fact that he has money, and he's jealous of the fact that Sejanus has money, while him, a naturally born capital citizen, is basically poor, right? And so he's kind of, he doesn't say anything, but he's mad that, he brings the food and everything because he's jealous. Like, he thinks that Sejanus is showing off when Sejanus really just cares about these people because at one time he was these people, right? He thinks this whole thing is just like morally wrong. But his father basically bought his way, like I said, into the capital, bought his son a spot on the mentor thing and everything. So there's like a point where he is trying to give his tribute a sandwich, and a little girl comes up and says, please don't feed the animals. And he's like, they're not animals, they're just like me and you. And then she makes a point about them being district, and that's why they belong in a cage. And so, that was taken out, the fact that it's emphasized that they are in a monkey cage, because these people are seen as not human, as animals. That was like really downplayed, except for the fact that if you've seen the bars in the movie, you know it's like a cage and everything. But like I said, those kind of things, they just seem downplayed. Even though they're there, they're just like really downplayed and everything. And it seemed to kind of go from that to a couple scenes, and then they started getting into like the actual Hunger Games, which there's a lot more that goes on before they get to the games. But yeah, before I forgot that scene, I wish I would have kept that scene in to kind of emphasize the fact that this hatred and this prejudice is, being taught to children and they're growing up. And this kind of obviously leads to the people that are clueless about what the games really are when it comes to like Katniss's time. But getting back to the Dean, Casca Highbottom, there is a part where he's like being interviewed by Lucky Flickerman, who is, the first host and everything. And I forget exactly how it goes, but they were talking about like the mentorship and everything, and Lucky goes, you aren't saying, or you can't be saying that our children are like theirs or they're comparable. Obvious that ours are a superior breed, which Highbottom says that it's obvious that our children have had better dental care, more access to food, better clothing. And so, it's obvious that he's one of the few people that are at least somewhat aware of their privilege, and the fact that it was just by chance that they were born into the wealth that they were born into, all the privileges that they got. Another thing too that bothered me, not just that interview and that whole thing not being in the movie, but if you didn't read the book, it just doesn't make sense, and why Highbottom hates Snow so much until, obviously it's revealed at the end, which I'm glad they kept that in there. But it's just, oh boy. If I didn't read it, it wouldn't have made sense to me. Because it kind of like, it's just this guy, this teacher, this whatever he is. He's the dean of the school. He just comes up to this one kid, this one like 18-year-old, I think he's 18 or 17, whatever he is in the book, but basically this high schooler, right? and just takes pop shots at him, right? He talks about how he was friends with his dad, and then how he knows that they don't have any money, and talks about his shoes being tight and his shirt and everything. And it's just like this guy is just like singling this person out. And the thing about it is, from both the books and the movie, you obviously know who Snow grows up to be, like who he becomes in the future. But at this point, he's in high school, right? So why does this guy hate him? You know, why is he telling him to his face that he's going to make sure that he doesn't get this money for this prize for mentoring? And that he knows how poor they are, and just like they taking these pop shots at him, right? It just didn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't make sense unless you read the book, because in the book it talks about how the dean's addicted to like morphling, which is, you know, drugs and stuff, and nicknames that Corio gave him. And there's parts where the dean just thinks he's like, you know, Corio is just like showboating for like a decent grade and stuff. So it makes more sense in the book, their conflict and stuff. I mean, obviously it makes much more sense at the end when you find out, like, you know, a bigger reveal and everything. But it didn't make sense in the movie until the ending part. At least not to me. Like, I definitely would have been confused if I didn't read it. It's not terrible. I used to think, though, that my least favorite was Catching Fire because of all the things that were taken out of Catching Fire. And I felt that Catching Fire was kind of watered down and almost a replica of the first one. But I would say that Catching Fire is probably better than this one. I would say if you've read the book and you're a fan of the series, at least go see it. The music is good. I wish we had a little bit more certain songs. But it is what it is. I would at least see it once to form an opinion. It's not a terrible movie. It just seems so watered down on the important things. Anyways, yeah, that is my review. See you guys later. Bye-bye.